Yo, what's up, you guys? So today we're talking about 6 photo tips for beginning street photographers. So if you're looking to get into street photography, this is the video for you. And that is because I basically have done it for a good period of time now, and I like sharing these tips with you guys because I think it'll help you out. And they will kind of lift the curtain on some things that people either don't talk about, won't talk about, or they kind of gatekeep. So I want to do the exact opposite of all those things and share my experience with you guys. That way you can learn from it, and maybe you can share me some of yours in the comments. But grab you something to drink, grab some snacks maybe. This might be a little bit of a long one, and we'll get into it. Let's roll the intro. Okay, so welcome back. I hope you got your snacks and your drinks, because first off, we're going to talk about tip number 1, which is dealing with lighting and composition. So the first one you don't really get to do a whole lot with because you're in the streets. You're just doing whatever the lighting tells you to do. So be an artist. And then the second one you do get to control, which is composition. But let's talk about lighting for a second. So when we're talking about lighting in street photography, it's not like this setup where I get to choose how my lights are or where the light's going to hit directly. We're kind of just doing whatever the light tells us. And I know that kind of sounds kind of cliche and artsy or whatever, but it's real. So essentially you're dealing with the fact that it's street photography. So you're just out in the street at whatever time. So think of that when you're talking about lighting and street photography, which is still really good because you can go out at any point in the day and make a good photo. It's just going to look different, and different is good, especially when we're talking about photography. You don't want your stuff to look the same as anybody else's. You want to be your own photographer. Now, talking about that, we have to talk about composition. So composition is the part that you actually do get to control, and this is still part 1B, I guess, of this talk, because composition is the thing that you get to control. You get to decide what is making it into your frame and what doesn't make it out of your frame, or what makes it out of your frame. So it's kind of the converse to, or the inverse, I'm not really good at math, to painting. So I've heard this term before and I really liked it. So when you're thinking about painting, you're the artist deciding what makes it onto your canvas, so you make the scene. So on the opposite side of that, you're a photographer, so you make it, you get to decide what makes it out of your scene. So you get to decide the crop, you get to decide what's inside your frame, and be thinking about that when you're making your street photos. That's the biggest 2 things when it comes to street photography, and that's part 1. So let's do number 2. Okay, so my second tip of street photography deals with your aperture. So in the same aspect that we get to control composition, we get to control our aperture. So first off, if you're shooting in that auto mode, take it off. Make sure you're shooting manual, because you need to learn it anyway, because you want to be able to adjust your settings how you want them to make the photo that you're looking for. So in that aspect, when we're in manual mode and we're reacting to the light that the world is giving us at the moment and that our scene is requiring, we want to shoot those apertures that will allow us to actually get everything in focus, or get the parts of the things that we want in focus. So a lot of the times people will come from some other aspect of photography, or they're just learning and they're just finding out bokeh. And don't get me wrong, I love bokeh. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially the blurry background you see in photos. It's kind of the thing that the iPhone is known for, because it basically digitally does this, but your camera will do it in a much better way because it's actually physically doing it versus digitally doing it. But beyond that, don't do it with all your photos. What you want to do, instead of shooting 1.2, 1.4, 1.8, run it up. Do 5.6, f8, f11, depending on your lighting. And obviously that all goes into the first part with your lighting. But if your lighting allows for you to shoot higher apertures, do it, because then you're actually going to get a lot more in focus. And I will give you this tip purely because I have missed so many photos trying to shoot at lower apertures and wider apertures that I've completely missed the photo. So basically my little saying is that your aperture and your f-stop is king over all of the other things. Obviously they have to play into it, but if you miss focus, you're going to miss the whole photo. And like we've said before in the first tip, that if you miss an opportunity, you might not get it again in street photography. So you want to be able to make sure you're nailing that focus, and by running up that aperture, you're going to do it. So now my third tip is essentially to hurry up and wait. And if you've ever heard this from the military, this is kind of their slogan, and it works exactly the same in street photography, purely because you will hurry up to a location, you will get there in time, you will get there ahead of time if you're really good, unlike myself. and then you will wait around for however long it takes to get the photo. And this is essentially the same way, because what you're trying to do is actually nail a photo that is like, you want to be there for the opportunity. So the thing with being early is you might be ahead of time. You might see that opportunity before it comes to you, which is the like gold standard. This is what you want to shoot for. But on the other side, if you're there on time, you'll still nail it, and that's the point. But if you're late even by like a half a second, you've missed some part of that photo. So you want to be looking for opportunities before they get to you, before they get in front of your lens. So hurry up and wait. Okay, so my next two tips deal with your actual gear, because we know that gear matters in some fact, and some people make it into this big giant argument whether gear does or doesn't matter. And I say that in some ways it does, and in some ways it doesn't. So I want to give you two tips purely dealing with gear itself. So tip number 4 in that aspect deals with your camera, and that means to get something that you like shooting, something that is not super cumbersome, something that is possibly lightweight, something that you're going to carry around with you, because street photography is not like any other version, because you will walk miles and 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 miles just waiting for photos and trying to get photos, versus something like studio photography where you still are going to be moving around a lot, but you don't move nearly as much as you do like in street photography. I think if you had to do it by miles, I think landscape photographers probably are number 1, and then street photographers are number 2, purely because we're out there in the field, like we're in the just the world going around us, right? So you got to be able to take something that you're actually going to carry. So I've seen people talk about massive cameras. So Peter McKinnon's really known for vlogging, at least back in the day, on a 1DX, which is a huge camera, huge, it's massive. And for him, it works out really well. And it's actually it's kind of a gimmick that turned out to be really awesome, because it's a massive camera, but it has massive features too. So for some people, something like that even might work out. But realistically, for most of us, I think smaller, lighter, more compact is kind of the way to go. But make sure you get a camera that you enjoy shooting, that you like, that has the features that you want, but also make sure it's something that you're actually going to carry. So tip number 5 goes along with tip number 4, talking about the camera, in that every single lens is a street lens. It doesn't matter. I don't care what anybody says. There are some that might be a little bit better than others, but generally speaking, if it's a lens and it's glass, it's going to be a pretty decent photo, because I mean, there's just so many different focal lengths, and you can do so many things with all of them. So when you're thinking about, I don't know if I should get this lens or that lens, does this work better for this? Does this work better for this? Like, if those are what you're going to shoot predominantly, yeah, maybe consider that. But honestly, if you go something 35, 50, 85 for something longer, if you really want to get crazy and get something long, you can do anything over 100. I mean, you could do a lot with a little, right? So a single lens can make so many great photos. So don't get stuck on gear. Okay, so tip number 6 is number 6 purely because it is probably my most important one beyond the actual aspects of the photo itself, and that's dealing with people inside the photos. So a lot of people, when they do street photography, start in architecture, in cars, in streets, landscapes, cityscapes, stuff like that, and they have 0 people in it. If anything, they honestly will get a photo of a cityscape of some kind and then edit people out because they just want the city, which is completely fine. Don't get me wrong, I made those too, and I love those photos still today. When you see a really, really good street photo that just is architecture, just cars, or just some aspect of a city, those are amazing. But if you're the person like I was, that wants to get people involved in your photos, and you want to get those crazy cool shots where people are just doing their normal day, kind of like a lifestyle, like street photo, you have to be willing to understand what that's going to take. And that's something that you're going to have to deal with on the inside first, because when you're able to do that, you're going to exude like a different vibe, and people are going to pick up on that. So by that, I basically mean being able to be introspective in your thoughts, understand that you have a nervousness about you, especially when you're starting and trying to take pictures of people, because you're just nervous. You don't know these people. What if they say these, like, what if they say no? What if they like slap my camera out of my hand? What if they do this? What if they do that? Honestly, you just have to take that, understand that that's going to happen, and then move forward from it, because it happens to everybody. It still happens to me. And it's just something that you will eventually grow on, and just understand, like, I mean, honestly, I'm going to do it and then see what happens. And with that, I give you my 6 tips that are basically the how-tos to get into street photography. I hope this helps you out. I know this has been kind of long, but I hope you got them drinks and them snacks because you probably need them to get through this one. But I promise if you've gotten through this whole thing, you've gotten to this point right here, that you now know something that the other person or other people that want to do this don't know and won't know, and you're going to go out and do it, and they're not going to. So get out there and make those street photos. Get out there and take them. Make sure you're doing it just like I said. Get all of those things, put them all into it, and then add your spice onto it. Do a little Salt Bae right on top, Enjoy it. It's supposed to be fun. And with that, I want to say also make sure if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below because it helps out the channel a ton. You'll get new information. I'll get to give you new information. Maybe we can have a discussion down in the comments too if you leave me a comment. If you want to, also hit that bell notification so you know you're the first one that gets all that new content whenever you're ready for it. And then on top of that, if you also want to, you can follow me on TikTok and Twitch. Not Twitch. I do have Twitch, but I don't really use it. I meant Twitter. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to at me for anything at all. I love answering questions. I love having a discussion with anybody that's willing to, so make sure you do all of those things. And with that, I give you my, and I will catch you in the next one. Make sure if you go out this week and you see this video, leave me a comment down below. Tell me that you went out. Tell me you tried some of this out because I know it'll help you out, and I want to hear all about it. And with that, I guess that is truly my conclusion. I will see you in the